Some very mixed messages coming out of the Obama administration on the growing ISIS threat. Both Secretary of State John Kerry and the Director of National Intelligence, known as the DNI, James Clapper, gave lawmakers completely different descriptions of the dangers that are facing Americans.
We are actually living in a period of less daily threat to Americans and to people in the world than normally, less deaths, less violent deaths today than through the last century.
In my 50-plus years in the intelligence business, I don't know of a time that has been more beset by challenges and crises around the world.
New Hampshire Republican Kelly Ayotte is a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee. She was in that hearing with James Clapper, listening to him yesterday. Senator, welcome. Good to have you here today.
Good morning. Thanks, Martha.
So, you know, John Kerry is upholding a line of thinking and discussion that we've heard from the president, that the world is becoming a more tolerant overall, more peaceful place, from Josh Earnest, who said that the globe is more tranquil in the environment that we're living in. And then you listen to Clapper, who basically has been saying the same thing in these hearings for 5 years, right?
He has. He's been very consistent. And the other thing he said yesterday is that 2014 was the most lethal year for global terrorism. So what we have here is, I think, the administration either is totally disconnected from the intelligence community, but what I suspect more is they are trying to spin what is a very bad situation around the world and really trying to posit an alternative reality. Let's not forget, Martha, that during his State of the Union, the president said the shadow of crisis has passed. That's very inconsistent with what we've heard from Director of National Intelligence Clapper in terms of what the state of affairs is from the intelligence perspective and what we know on the ground.
Yeah. You know, I think more important, perhaps, than the larger statement that John Kerry is making about, I guess it's about statistics compared to World War II and Stalin, and, you know, the more important thing, I think, is his assessment of how it's going on the ground. And they seem to think that we're getting the upper hand against ISIS.
And that's not what Director Clapper said yesterday. He said that ISIS is actually metastasizing and actually going into other areas beyond Iraq and Syria, which we have seen in places like Libya. And we've also seen, let's not forget, we were able to kill a former Guantanamo detainee who was recruiting people in Afghanistan for ISIS. So we're seeing ISIS pop up in other areas, and then we also are seeing them inspiring attacks as well.
So what I can't figure out is, I mean, if you're not realistic and you're not presenting a realistic picture to the American people, God forbid something happen here, how are they going to explain that, given what they've been telling everyone?
I think it's very problematic. Obviously, intelligence community, they're going to just tell you what they know based on what information they've received and deaths and things happening around the world. So I think it's really important that the American people understand it's a very challenging time around the world, and we face situations where we've had individuals traveling to ISIS from countries, Western countries, even some Americans that have been joining in this fight. And so this is a very dangerous time around the world. We need to be more vigilant than ever, and we need to be more aggressive in fighting global terrorism.
All right, so if ISIS is in fact growing and not, you know, we're not really getting the upper hand on regaining territory, which seems to be the take of the military and of intelligence out there, then you've got the issue of these 100+ Americans who have traveled to the region to train, according to James Clapper yesterday. What are we doing to pull passports, to follow up on these people, to figure out who they are? How is that intelligence effort going so that we don't end up with someone coming back here with a bomb and blowing up an entire area, and then we find out, oh yeah, he was on a watch list?
Well, absolutely, Martha. I think that there obviously is efforts underway in the intelligence community to keep track of these Americans. What worries me also is that many of these Europeans who have gone and have fought with ISIS, they're part of our visa waiver program, and if they don't get on our watch list and we don't have good intelligence from our partners, they can also travel to the United States too, and I think that's a deep, deep concern. And I'm not the only one that's been concerned about. People like Dianne Feinstein, who is the ranking member, a Democrat on the Intelligence Committee, has expressed concern about this as well.
Yeah, I mean, so it's one thing, forgive me, to express concern, but is anyone doing anything about this to make sure that our intelligence officials are doing absolutely everything they can, and perhaps to lobby the administration to adopt a policy that's more similar to what they're doing in London and in parts of Europe, in England and parts of Europe, to pull people's passports?
Yeah, absolutely. Many of us have been pushing the administration on this and pulling passports and getting things done for much longer than the last couple of months. And then I think there is some of us who are looking at legislation too, the bipartisan legislation on the visa waiver program, because I see that as a huge vulnerability for us.
Yeah.
We need to be much stronger on it. But we need to do much more, and it has to start at the top. And we can't have a situation where we have the administration not being truthful or really acknowledging, being clear about what the reality is on the ground. And we see this inconsistency, and they need to be clear.
All right. Steve Hayes has a piece in the Weekly Standard this week. He's going to talk to us in just a little while that draws a much tighter connection than we've seen in the past between al-Qaeda and Iran. That relationship is much cozier than people realize. So that, of course, begs the question, if we're negotiating an agreement with Iran, are we, by proxy, negotiating an agreement with al-Qaeda as part of that?
Well, one thing I can tell you is that the administration in these negotiations hasn't addressed at all that Iran is the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world. In fact, Director Clapper yesterday confirmed their activities not only in terrorism, and look what they did in Yemen. Yemen is the headquarters for al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, but they essentially, by supporting the Houthis, helped that government be undermined and overthrown. And we were working with that government to fight al-Qaeda. So they are undermining our interests, and also they are developing ICBM program missiles that are not being dealt with in these negotiations. So I think there's a lot of concerns about Iran. Many of us are very concerned that the administration is not negotiating a strong enough deal to end their program and their activities in the region to promote terrorism.
Yeah. Well, when you look at all these groups, though, whether it's the Houthis or al-Qaeda or ISIS or Iran, it seems the things that they all have in common is that they don't like us. The only people that do is Israel, according to what we're seeing here, and Benjamin Netanyahu's getting the cold shoulder. So,
well, I
interesting.
wish they would be. I wish they would be, half as angry at Iran as they've been at Israel.
Kelly Ayotte, Senator, thank you very much. Good to speak with you.
Thanks, Martha.